explain your role in the Kansas City, Missouri School District during the years between 1971 and 1997?
I started in the school district in 1950, but by 1971 I had seen an awful lot in the district. And of course I consider myself as a person who has really been involved in integration and desegregation. And in 1971, I was still on a project with the school district of Kansas City, Missouri. I started out as a classroom teacher, and then I was involved on some federally funded programs with a loan from the school district with the Institute for Community Studies here on UMKC's campus. And when I completed those projects, I started as an elementary school principal at the William Rockhill Nelson School. I had not dreamed of or considered becoming an elementary school principal, but the experiences that I had, I think, had prepared me for that role. And I was assigned to the school with some feelings on the part of some of the other elementary principals that they should have been selected to serve as principal of William Rockhill Nelson School. Nelson School at that time was considered rather prestigious. It was a building that prepared teachers, not only teachers, but inevitably, when a person served as the principal at Nelson School, they became the superintendent. And at a meeting of the elementary school principals where I was introduced, I could feel the tension in the auditorium of some of the principals who thought that they should have been appointed as principal. And it was the first time that an African American had been assigned to that school as elementary principal. I was received well by the students and parent groups, and worked well with the community and with the university. I became a part of the school advisory committee here with UMKC and pretty much depended on the university in supporting the ideas that I had about integration and desegregation. I started, my first experience with integration and desegregation in the school district was right after the Brown versus the school board decision, and that was the integration of teachers in the Kansas City School District in 1958. And I was asked to be one of those. It was met with some anxiety on the part, not on my part, because I had no problem with it, but there in the black community and among some of our colleagues, that some of the better teachers were being taken away from the schools that were predominantly black to go into other environments. That was not a difficult decision for me, nor was it one that was difficult to perform. As a matter of fact, the assistant superintendent at the time was asked by the Bossier City, Louisiana school district to come down and bring me with him to tell how the school district of Kansas City, Missouri had successfully integrated their teaching staff and the principals. I saw, and let's be clear about this whole issue of segregation and desegregation and integration as it relates to our district. We know that housing played a tremendous part in how our districts were carved out. In addition, we had what I would consider an unfriendly school board that continued to draw boundaries where it created more desegregation rather than integration opportunities.
What efforts were put into place in Kansas City to integrate schools?
The first effort was that of integrating teachers, and at the time I was an elementary teacher at Carver School, and the district asked that I move to Yeager Elementary School, which was, of course, Carver Elementary School was one of the many segregated schools for African American students. And Yeager was in an area where there were more students who were white, and of course the staff and faculty, everybody was white. They asked two of the teachers from Carver to go to Yeager. When we went, there was a white principal and no African American teachers other than the two of us who were sent there. When I went, and I don't like to be disparaging, but when we went, one of the first things we noticed was that we were coming from an environment, a teaching environment where we were always on our feet and working and interacting with the students. We were appalled when we saw that the principal stayed in the office as opposed to being in the classroom, with the teachers, and the desks in the classrooms, on the teacher's desk, there was a little pot or vase of flowers, and that was it. And we would often talk back and forth about the differences that we saw in the efforts on the part of the administrator, the building administrator, and the teachers in getting involved with their students. That was my first experience with integration and the integration of teachers. Ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the housing had a great effect on how things changed. At that time, I-70 was being built. Many of the houses were torn down and the neighborhoods changed. The principal became African American, and we had a few white teachers who stayed. Then, in a few years, the staff was all black, and the student population was pretty much black. Here again, housing had much to do with that.
And how does the community respond to these efforts?
The community at that time was not as involved as parents later became involved in, or it might have been when I moved, or when I became an elementary principal, when there was an effort on the part of parents to be a part of what was going on in the school. The parents were very receptive and very cooperative in the buildings. I think it might have been the move when I became the principal at Nelson Elementary School. I think there are two parts, I think. One was an effort to parent involvement because of the makeup of the community, the non-African American community. I think that they felt, some of the parents felt that they needed to be close to or to express that they had as much education as I had and wanted to be involved in whatever was going on in the building. Of course, that was not met with resistance because parental involvement was one of the things that I supported, because prior to becoming an elementary principal, I had worked on 2 federally funded programs that the district had, and a part of that was to go into the buildings and work with the teachers on integration and classroom ideas that would involve the students in small groups, where instead of sitting in straight rows, the students were interacting with each other as they learned. So some of the ideas and approaches I brought with me.
What were some of the attitudes of educators and school staff at that time regarding school integration?
I think there was reluctance on both sides. I think that African American teachers were comfortable with being, we were comfortable with being with our own children and being sure that they were getting the kind of education that we felt that they should have. I don't think that there was any refusal to cooperate and work with each other. At least I didn't feel it or sense it. I thought that the staffs worked well together. And the students, of course, I think they mirrored the feeling that they sensed among the staff and the teachers.
And what were some of the attitudes of the students then at that time regarding school integration?
You know, I don't think kids paid that much attention to it. As a matter of fact, I would suspect that you'd have some disagreements. They would have disagreements among themselves, whether it was, but I don't remember any racial fights in any of the buildings, or fights because of racial attitudes.
In what ways do you feel that you contributed to school integration?
I guess I contributed in my demeanor and my acceptance of everybody. I was raised that way, trained, had worked on 2 projects in interpersonal skill, and I feel that everything that I did was in what I felt was the way to deal in understanding one person's view, helping them understand mine, and then being able to proceed on that basis.
And how did efforts to integrate schools affect your role in the district?
It caused enhancement on my part in terms of, I started out as a child teaching on my grandmother's front porch, wanting to be a teacher, never thinking or making an effort to become anything but a teacher. And then, of course, when I became an elementary principal, that I had never thought of a superintendent, becoming a superintendent, and but I did pursue my dream of becoming an elementary teacher in all of the grades K through 7.
And given your role in the district during 1971 to 1997, describe what you recall as academic outcomes for students.
In 71, I started here at the William Rockhill Nelson School as a principal. And I felt that the students had a wide a wide range of educational opportunities. I remember, well, we had a very good staff. A 7th grade teacher watched this building as it was being built and used that as a part of her curriculum. In math, she would bring the students over. They would talk with the contractors and with the workers. And of course, the workers were integrated, as were the students. So it was an experience of learning that was beneficial.
And what might be some of the social outcomes for students of school desegregation?
Every person has a feeling about their relationships, either with their own race or with other races. Some of the students who have graduated remember each other and still have fond memories. There are some students who still have feelings of neglect, and of course, they're even with the attempt to bring races together, there are outside influences that we can't say that it became or it evolved as a result of education.
And in what ways might school integration have shaped Kansas City communities?
I'm going to be honest with my bias. I think that integration has in many ways been a negative influence in the African American community. And we lost a lot in terms of our early beginnings and belief and hopes and dreams, and giving up to try to achieve hopes and dreams, and chasing hopes and dreams that were not there for them. And the neglect that was felt as these attempts were made.
What changes do you think are needed then to improve outcomes for students in today's urban public schools?
We need to start earlier, much earlier. I think that my experience in one of the buildings as an elementary principal, where preschool was a part of the makeup of that building, I think that I felt there were more successes there. In addition, there was an integrated staff. The year that I left, in 1977, the year that I left William Rockhill Nelson School and moved to Woodland Elementary School, the superintendent had an opportunity to participate in a Title III program. And that was the first real sign that I saw of integration. And that was because not only of the student population and the faculty and the community, this building had a preschool program and a program called Follow Through, where the students were taught and followed as they were taught the Title I Head Start program. The faculty was very much integrated. the parent group, and that was the year that school advisory committees were set up in the district. In that building, we had a totally integrated staff, a totally integrated school advisory committee, a totally integrated PTA. I was the administrator who worked with the school district to assist us in working with the community where the older students, let me give you a picture. In the Woodland Elementary School, preschool through 3, the students who were living in the Wayne Minor projects, who were ages K through 3, stayed in the Woodland building. The students 4 through 6 went to Whittier Elementary, which was a white community. They were bused back and forth. The students the parents of the students who were bused to Woodland were cooperative. Of course, I'd have to go to the bus stop several mornings because of the behavior problems on the bus, and the driver would ask that I would meet them at the bus stops so that the students, if they would see me, they would become more cooperative. But that was the first real sign of integration that I saw in the Kansas City School District, and it was through that Title III program. When I became a legislator, I didn't go until the year 2000. And of course, the foundation formula was the biggest issue that I dealt with. I served on the budget committee from day one, the total 11 years that I served in the Missouri House and the Senate. So I had asked the Speaker of the House to put me on the Education Committee because that was my preference, but he said he wanted me on the Budget Committee. I had no interest in the Budget Committee whatsoever. I had earlier met one of my colleagues, Charlie Shields, who pretty much knew everything there was to know, and he was not of the same party as I, but he had the knowledge, and I knew that was the person I wanted to meet and get to know, and I did, and learned an awful lot about the school funding issue as a member of the Budget Committee. He, in turn, we're still friends today, and he, in turn, attributes a lot of what he knows about the school, the functioning of the district, and its history as having worked with me.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us about school integration in Kansas City?
Right now, I'm very sorry that our students had to undergo the kinds of atrocities as it relates to integration and desegregation. And I had a very difficult time working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Commissioner I felt that some injustices were done with our district, and continually fought for the Kansas City School District because I saw the children as the losers, and they were, and wondered how we could expect the academic achievement with all of these other kinds of things that they had to go through. Issues of school boards, again, meddling and not coordinated and focusing on assisting. But I'm very hopeful that things would get better if we would do two things. One is implement early education and throughout the district. And if we would get culturally competent teachers and staff and faculty. I just read, unfortunately, that across this country, teachers are not, or people are not interested in becoming teachers. And on the one hand, you can see why. When I was on a special project over at Metropolitan Community College, titled Taking a Lead in Educating New Teachers, the purpose of that project was to go to the elementary schools and the high schools particularly to talk about, and starting with the 6th graders, talking about them becoming teachers. I'll never forget my visit at Winnetonka, and one young lady said she never wanted to become a teacher. And the reason was teachers are dogged that by administration, and she concluded her little spiel with me, and the kids are bad. When I look at what's going on in the schools now, and it's the same thing that I see in the homes, where the kids pretty much tell the parents what to do, and that's not how I was trained or raised particularly. And in the schools, parents no longer support the teachers or the district, and they will go with the child's side as opposed to the teachers. I was raised where my grandmother who reared me thought that the teacher was always right. As a matter of fact, all grown folks were right. But I would like to see caring teachers in the classroom and preschool education.